Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Security Guard Command. So today I've decided to try and tackle a very difficult topic, and this topic is how to identify a criminal before they commit a crime. All right, guys, so I'm going to attempt to put together a recipe for identifying and preventing crime and identifying criminals before they actually commit a crime. And this is not a simple task. And I've talked to a lot of newer guards out there who just become frustrated because they miss the signs and a crime is committed right under their noses and they were unable to prevent it. And I tell them, hey, you know what? This ability to catch a criminal or to identify a criminal before they actually commit a crime most often takes a lot of time and experience in the job and in the field. When you're new in security, you've got a lot to learn, and the learning curve is often years before you really become good at the job. When I first started, a lot of people got away with all these. I was very naive, let's put it that way. People did a lot of things that I just didn't notice. And I think the number one thing that you must start off doing to learn this skill is to pay attention. I've done videos before on establishing the baseline for your environment and then watching for anomalies, anything that's different, and paying attention to it. And don't get frustrated if you are doing this and you still don't identify criminals, because what's going to need to happen is you need to listen and pay attention. And yes, you need to identify those anomalies, but how are you going to know which anomalies to actually pay attention to? The only way that you are going to start figuring that out is to start associating those anomalies with crimes that actually happen. And once you start to associate those anomalies, then you will be able to do that in the future. And you are going to have to experience a lot of situations before you start to associate those anomalies with actual crimes that are committed. And that's where a lot of it takes years. Unless you're in a very busy area where a lot of stuff happens, it's just going to take some time. But the number one key is to pay attention and make a mental note of every single anomaly that happens, because it's gonna come where an anomaly is tied to a crime, and you just got to learn how to identify that. That takes time, and it takes numbers. One of the things that I do to identify a potential criminal is I attempt to make eye contact with every single person within a certain radius. And usually this is roughly 50 to 100 feet of where I'm standing or where I'm posted. I try to make eye contact, and I make sure that they see me. Because when somebody who is planning a crime is approaching your area and you make eye contact with them, that causes something to happen within their brain. And what happens is when they see you, you represent an obstacle to what they're attempting to do. And so their brain has to literally shift gears and think about what they're going to do and how they're going to react and respond to your presence. And when they do this, oftentimes this whole shifting of gears in their brain manifests itself physically, and you will see a physical change in their posture or their direction of travel. A lot of times you'll see a visible sign of shock. They'll be like, they'll stop suddenly, and then they'll resume their travel. But they have to stop and think about how to react to your presence. And so pay attention to people's reactions once you make eye contact. And oftentimes I will make eye contact, I'll see the reaction, and if I'm working with other guards, I will notify them of a potential subject. I say, just keep an eye out, just a simple BOL. Or I will, if I'm working for a site that has, in-house LP or whatever, what have you, loss prevention, I'll get on the radio and I'll notify loss prevention to pay special attention to this particular subject, and they'll watch him on the cameras, and they'll decide if they want to continue watching him or let it go. There are other things to look out for in a person's body language that can set off an alert, and those things are commonly hands in pockets, averting their gaze away from you, or visually trying to avoid you. A lot of times when a person is paying attention to you, they will square their shoulders right at you. Even if they're looking a different direction, you can tell that their attention is on you because their shoulders are essentially pointed at you. And if they're looking somewhere else, chances are they're still looking at you. They're using glances or sideways glances to keep an eye on you and know where you're at all times. If they're turned away from you and they're not looking at you, then you can be pretty confident that they're not interested in you. But when someone shows an unusual amount of interest in you, being in a uniform and all, that's a red flag for me. And even though this is not something that will indicate a potential crime is about to be committed, it is something to add to the list of things to look out for. So it's the totality of the circumstances in this case that are going to lead you to the conclusion that this person may be about to commit a crime. So this is just another example of something to look out for. Another thing that I look out for is the type of clothing that a person is wearing. And you have to be careful about this because you don't want to be accused of profiling anybody. However, if it's 100 degrees outside and they're wearing a thick winter coat, something's up, and it's worth paying more attention to that particular person. You don't want to just let them slide, because who wears a thick winter coat in the middle of the summer in 100-degree heat? It just doesn't make any sense. So pay attention to that. A lot of times they'll use a coat like that to conceal something that they plan on stealing. So it's not a telltale sign, but it is something that would be something that would trigger you to look out for more signs. So that's just something to, and that also would fall under an anomaly, because it's if no one else is wearing a coat like that and they're the only ones, definitely keep your eyes on them. The next thing that I want to talk about, and this is another thing that comes with experience and time, and it has to do with paying attention, but it is way more granular than simply looking for anomalies outside of a baseline in your environment. And what I want to talk about is something that is very difficult to describe, and has often been called supernatural or having a superpower, and that is a gut feeling or an intuition. And science tries to define intuition as what it really is or how it happens, and really there is no definitive definition or explanation as to how it works. But my take on intuition and the gut feeling is simply your brain or your consciousness processing lots of little tiny bits of data that come in from your environment. And that could be from sound, that could be from certain light, it could be from just about any type of sensory input, smells. And our brains are extremely good at just taking all that data and putting it all together and spitting out a conclusion. And part of this is why a lot of people tend to lean towards conspiracy theories, because conspiracy theories are formulated from a lot of data, from a lot of different data points, and our brains just try to fill in the gaps and figure out why they're getting all these sensory inputs and all this data. And that's what our brains do. They fill in the gaps of when there's information missing. And that's where a lot of false conclusions come from. But when you gain a lot of experience, all of these different sensory inputs that you experience, you will soon start to recognize patterns in those inputs. And pretty soon you're going to start recognizing that when A, B, C, and D start to happen, that there's something up, and you get that nagging feeling. And that's the gut feeling. That is what sets you off and really starts to make you think, and you start to pay attention even more, and you start to hone in on the person who's responsible for creating this nagging feeling within you. And it is very difficult to gain this gut feeling. Some people just naturally have it, and props to them. But for a lot of people, it is not easy to accomplish being able to reliably have a gut feeling. And so, again, this is another thing that comes from a lot of time and experience on the job, paying attention and really learning what all of those sensory inputs mean. And these things are small. They are not obvious events that happen in your environment. They are very small, very subtle, and you do not consciously notice these sensory inputs. They are so subtle that they just don't stick out. But your subconscious and your conscious brain pick up on these things and try to come to a conclusion, and that's where that nagging feeling comes from. So that's my attempt at explaining how a gut feeling works, and knowing that you may be able to hone that skill and use it to your benefit to be a better security officer. As security, I would highly recommend that you pay attention to everything that goes on, and if something seems off or suspicious to you, write it down. Have a notebook handy and write a brief description and the time and date of when it happened, because even if it turns out to be nothing, you still have a time and a date and a brief explanation or a brief summary of what you observed. And what you can do is that when events do happen, you can try to correlate those things that you observed with events that happen later on and see if they have any sort of a connection. And to give you an example of this, when I was guarding a cannabis dispensary, I had arrived to work in the morning right before opening, and I had noticed that the managers were huddled around the video surveillance monitor, and they were looking at something that had happened. So I walked over and says, "Hey, did something happen last night?" And they said, "Yeah, some guy came in at such and such a time after we were closed and did this." And I said, "Okay, let me see." And I looked at it, and almost immediately I recognized the subject on camera. And so I whipped out my notepad, and 2 days prior, I had actually observed a guy kind of acting a little weird. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but his behavior just really set me off. And so I wrote it down, the time, the date, and what it was that I observed. So I pulled out my notepad and I went to that date, and I said, "Oh yeah, here, go to this time and date on the camera." And sure enough, the same guy showed up on the same spot on the camera, and his license plate was in clear view in the parking lot at this time. So now we were able to pull an identity for that license plate simply because I wrote down something in my notebook that really had no relevance at the time. And that type of thing really helps you to hone your skills of identifying somebody who is up to something or somebody who may do something later on. And once you start to build up enough of these incidences, you're going to be very good at just recognizing right away that, hey, this guy's going to do something. So write everything down. Guys, I want to talk about pass downs. So we all should be giving pass downs to whoever is relieving us. We should communicate anything that stands out to other guards. Have conversations. Share your notes if you can. Read what other guards have experienced on their shifts, because you might see something happen on your shift that's related to something that happened on another shift, and that will help you to start identifying things, because you're not going to be there 24/7. You're going to be there for 8, 12, 16 hours at a time, and you're not going to see what happens on the other 8, 12, or 16 hours that you're not working. So it's really a good idea, guys, to be in the practice of receiving pass downs from your guards, sharing the weird, odd things that you noticed on your shift. Give descriptions of the people that set you off, but you didn't really have any probable cause or reason to suspect anything. Just say, I saw this guy. If you see him again, just keep an eye on him, that sort of thing. And this is really going to help both you and your other guards to start recognizing events that are either about to occur or have occurred. And you get better at this. And again, this just falls under the totality of the circumstances surrounding your job site. And a lot of this just takes a lot of hard work and a lot of practice, guys. The bottom line, you got to be paying attention. You can't be on your computer playing a video game. You can't be on your phone. There's just no room, guys. It's just, aside from it being totally unsafe and dangerous to not be paying attention, if you want to be a better security officer, you have to be paying attention your entire shift, not messing around with other things. And again, this also falls in if you are doing other job duties, like, say, cleaning or answering phones for the client or whatever. I mean, I've seen so many odd things that clients have had security officers doing, like carrying clients' luggage up to their rooms at a hotel. That's not security's job, and doing that puts the whole place at risk. Security can't be there to notice anything occurring or be there to protect the establishment, because they're in an elevator going up to the 3rd floor carrying somebody's luggage. So really, we need to be on our game. We need to be paying attention and doing the job that we are hired to do. And guys, if you're a manager of one of these companies and the client's asking your employees to do these other odd jobs, I would respectfully decline and explain why, and hopefully the client will understand, because the client is hiring you to guard and protect their assets, their property, their clientele, and you can't do that if you're not paying attention and if you're distracted doing other duties. So anyway, there's a lot more things to add to this, but this is all I could come up with right now, guys. I don't script these videos out, so I just speak off the top of my head and come up with these things as I'm talking. So let me know if I missed anything, guys. Let me know if you can add anything to this video. What do you do to make yourself a better guard and to more reliably spot anybody who's up to no good? Stay safe out there, guys. I will catch you later.